Howdy, everybody. Dr. Andy Woods here. This is Pastor's Point of View number 334. I'm the pastor teacher here at Sugarland Bible Church. This is being released December 27th, 2024. This is going to be our last podcast, if you will, for the new year. We trust everybody had a fantastic Christmas. Looking forward to New Year's, just a great time of the year, celebrating the birth of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. As I mentioned before, I'm the pastor teacher here at Sugarland Bible Church. We have a prophecy update for you today. You'll notice our preview slide, what we're going to try to cover today, Lord willing. Boy, the world is moving in a tyrannical direction, just like God said it would move in the last days. We'll bring you up to speed there. Technology, last days technology isn't slowing down, so we'll bring you up to speed there. A new religion is being foisted upon us, false religion. The Pope, as I'll show you, is creating a brand new Jesus, a brand new gospel, and a brand new religion to discard authentic Christianity. We know that the capital of the New World Order will be Babylon, or moving in that direction, and then there's some key societal signs to think about. Demon worship in the last days, and also the kind of normalization of murder. So I'll show you where those prophecies are found in Scripture and how our culture is moving in that direction as well. Let's go ahead and start, if we could, with global tyranny. Kind of the biblical entry point when discussing this is Daniel 7, verse 23, which among many other passages of Scripture predicts a one-world tyrannical government that will exist on planet Earth before Jesus comes back and overthrows it. Daniel 2,600 years ago predicted this: the fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on the earth, which will be different from all the other kingdoms and will devour the whole earth, tread it down and crush it. Whole earth is one world government. Tread, devour, and crush is language of tyranny. I mean, that's the type of government that would exist in the last days, just prior to Messiah establishing his own kingdom upon the earth. Here is a statue that we frequently refer to. It's a vision that both Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel saw. To make a long story short, those 10 toes at the bottom, feet, iron mixed with clay, that's the 10 horns, 10 kings, 10 region, 10 nation confederacy that will cover the earth when Jesus comes back. And you'll notice that the feet are connected to the legs. The legs, to make a long story short, would represent a prophecy that Daniel had about ancient Rome, legs of iron, eastern and western divisions of ancient Rome. And so the fact that the feet are connected to the legs past, the feet future, demonstrates that this one world tyranny is going to be Eurocentric. It's going to arise out of the cultural inheritance of ancient Rome. And so that's why this first story that I'm going to share with you is very interesting. This is something taking place in Europe, part of ancient Rome, in this case Germany, and I think it demonstrates the type of tyranny which will eventually cover the whole earth in the last days. This is an article from Remix, and all the articles that I'm sharing with you in this episode and our prior episode come from the month of December 2024. These are very recent articles. The title of it is German Police Raid the Home of a 14-year-old Boy for Posting a Banned Hashtag on TikTok. The raid, which took place on St. Nicholas Day, came after the boy posted the phrase, "Everything for Germany." So you'll notice that people are being criminalized in Germany, in Europe, not based on what they do, but based on things they post online. And it doesn't matter whether you understand the full import of your post or not. The fact that you did it is enough. And the fact that you're 14 years old doesn't protect you. So you're obviously dealing with a culture now in Germany and a civilization which really has no concept of free speech. I mean, the concept is almost, void in the collective consciousness of the German governmental leaders. The article says German police raided the home of a 14-year-old boy in Bavaria after he allegedly posted the hashtag everything for Germany. The raid happened in the early morning of St. Nicholas Day, December the 6th. The police stated the term is a symbol used by an unconstitutional organization which violates Section 86A of the German Criminal Code. The search warrant describes the police raid as a proportionate and appropriate for the seriousness of the crime. It also indicates that the youth was mature enough at the time of the crime to understand the wrongfulness of his post and acted in accordance with this understanding. The teen in question, however, has said that he did not know the term everything for Germany was banned under the German Criminal Code. The two brothers, who have no criminal record with the police whatsoever, I mean, no priors, as we would say. The phrase most notably came to public attention during the trial of the Alternative for Germany chairman, who was sentenced with a fine for using the same phrase during a Alternative for Germany event. Notably, this person that they're speaking of is decades older than the teen in this case. Police are increasingly raiding the homes in Germany over insults directed at politicians and speech violations. Currently, Germany's left is looking to increase penalty and empower prosecutors to go after those who insult politicians. So here's a 14-year-old that apparently posted the wrong thing, didn't even understand what he was posting, is not considered too young to bear the full punishment of his crime. And his crime is basically not something he did, but something he posted, and he wasn't even aware was problematic. And so they're going to take the full extent of the law and throw the book at this young person, no doubt damaging, if not destroying much of his life, his reputation, and the life of his family. This is the type of one-world tyrannical insanity which is now commonplace in many sectors in Europe. It's sad to think about, but at the same time, God said this day would arise. Look for this kind of thing to expand worldwide. Look for this kind of thing to expand even into places that once had a concept of free speech, like our northern neighbor, Canada. Notice this article from the AP, December 5th, 2024. Canada bans more types of firearms and proposes donating guns to Ukraine. The article says Canada said Thursday that it is outlawing another 324 firearm varieties. Guns, the public safety minister said, belong on the battlefield, not in the hands of hunters or sport shooters. Ottawa also said that it is working with the government of Ukraine to see how the guns can be donated to support the fight against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This move follows the May 2020 ban of 1,500 makes and models of firearms, a number that grew to more than 2,000 by November of this year as new variants were identified. The latest restriction announced Thursday by Public Safety Minister LeBlanc follows expressions of concern from gun control advocates that many assault-style firearms were not included in the 2020 ban. This means that these firearms can no longer be used, LeBlanc says. Opposition conservative leader called the announcement a stunt by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government that attacks licensed and law-abiding hunters and sport shooters. I mean, this is the kind of thing that's happening where law-abiding citizens are now being treated as criminals because they happen to own guns or they happen to own weapons. I like what Elon Musk said not long ago when I heard him on an interview, and he was being challenged over his Second Amendment views in the United States. He said, "Is there any guarantee you can give me that our government at one point won't become tyrannical?" He asked that to the questioner. And the answer, of course, is you can't. And that's why we have weapons in the United States. That's why Canadians initially were allowed to own weapons to protect them from the exact kind of thing that's happening in Canada and other places of the world, runaway tyranny. And of course, the tyrants, whenever they come to power, they always do two things. They register the weapons so they know where they are, and then they confiscate the weapons. Because the Adolf Hitlers and the Fidel Castros and the Saddam Husseins, etc., of the world do not want their populations to be armed, even though, at least here in the United States, it's within our God-given rights to possess weapons. And now they're taking these weapons away, at least some, doesn't say all, but some, and sending them over to a very controversial war. I mean, I know this much about Ukraine, Russia. It's very disputed and debated how much help and assistance we should give to Ukraine. I don't know if we're all going to agree on that issue, but I know it's disputed. So we're going to take the weapons of Canadians and send them over into a situation where not everyone feels that the Ukrainians should be armed in the first place or fighting like they are in the first place. So my point is not to take a position on Russia, Ukraine. I have my own thinking on that. That's not my point here. My point is you're taking weapons away from people and shipping them over to a war that's a big question mark in the minds of many people. I mean, that's what the Canadian government is doing. And so this is always the sign of tyranny. That's why America's founding fathers said the last bastion, the last stand, if you will, against tyranny is not just an educated population, an illiterate population, and a Bible-reading population, which can't be propagandized, but an armed population as well. And this is a right that's deteriorating in our neighbor to the north, in Canada, according to this article. Well, tyranny is showing its ugly head, not just in different parts of the world like Germany or Canada. It's showing its ugly head right here in the late, great United States of America through the management of what they call misinformation or disinformation. What is that dealing with? It's dealing with any type of narrative that goes against the narrative that the big government globalists want you to understand or believe. Anything that counters it, they want to put it in a great big category called misinformation or disinformation and censor it from social media, censor it from media, censor it from your news feeds so that you can't think outside the box. And you say, well, this doesn't happen. In the minds of American politicians. Will think again. And to help us with that, notice this article from Fox News, December 9th. Tells you how the outgoing Biden administration has been spending your money and how it continues to spend it on priorities. their priorities. It says here Biden spent millions on misinformation research. The details are even more disturbing than you think. Misinformation efforts by Biden-Harris White House included the creation of counter messages. The article says a new report by Open the Books, a nonpartisan governmental watchdog, has revealed that since 2021, the Biden administration has spent hundreds and millions of taxpayer dollars on research related to misinformation, a significant rise compared to the first Trump administration. The increase in spending raises serious concerns about civil liberties and free speech online, especially on social media platforms where much of the Biden administration's efforts were directed. Since 2021, the Biden-Harris White House has spent at least $26 million on research grants and contracts related to misinformation and disinformation. During President-elect Donald Trump's first term, the same federal agency provided just $6.72 million on similar programs. Now, to my mind, that's $6.72 million too many. But the Biden administration took $6.72 million and expanded it to $267 million. That means that the Biden administration increased federal spending on contracts and grants for misinformation by 3,800%. The federal government, this article opines, shouldn't be involved, directly or indirectly, in the fact-checking industry, nor should engage in efforts designed to limit the speech of citizens, particularly when the taxpayers, see, it's your money, are footing the bill. Incredibly, there was a grant to the University of Pennsylvania, which is still active and not slated to end until 2027. What we have found is clear evidence the Biden White House used funds to support or develop Orwellian surveillance and propaganda strategies, create methods and tools to restrict speech online, and even to finance highly politicized reports critical of Trump. The truth is, a government that respects free speech rights does not spend hundreds of millions of dollars trying to figure out ways to limit or combat or research the speech of its own citizenry. It's not hard to imagine how such programs and strategies could be used by federal officials who have repeatedly been caught pressuring social media companies to restrict the use of users and limit the spread of news stories that damage left-wing politicians and their family members, such as Hunter Biden. So we're going to spend a ton of money policing what you can see and hear by way of news, and if it's something we don't like, we're just going to call it misinformation or disinformation. I mean, what do you call this? It's totalitarianism. Totalitarians always stop the flow of anything leading to an educated or armed citizenry, and they always stop the flow of information. And that's what the Biden administration has been doing for the last several years, and that's what it continues to do. So totalitarianism is something that's knocking on the door right here in the late, great United States of America. Why does government exist? If you look at our Declaration of Independence and Constitution, government exists to protect our God-given rights. Well, these people aren't protecting our God-given rights. They're scheming and manipulating and spending in a way that would subtract from our God-given rights, the free flow of information. Along this same subject of tyranny, notice this article from the Gateway Pundit. This one by Jim Hoft, dated December the 12th, 2024. It says, IG Horowitz releases January 6th report. The claim is made that the FBI had 26 confidential human sources at the Capitol. Here's the videos and photos of these government operatives and cutouts. Notice what the article says. IG Horowitz releases the January 6th report, claims the FBI had 26 confidential human sources at the U.S. Capitol. Inspector General David Horowitz released this much anticipated January 6th report on Thursday. Here is the full report released by Biden's Department of Justice on the confidential human sources who were working the crowd. On January 6, 2021, at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. It has been widely reported that the violence would not have taken place or reached the fever pitch that it did if Nancy Pelosi brought the National Guard as President Trump requested days before the planned protests and rallies. In the IG report released today, the Department of Justice admits to 26 confidential human sources working that day inside the Trump protest at the U.S. Capitol. The IG report ignored how undercover employees were also at the U.S. Capitol that day. In other words, there could have been a lot more government informants at the J6 protest 2021 than even this report indicates. But what we've been subjected to is this idea that Trump led a riot. J6, January 6th, over the fact that he was disgruntled about the election results. So Trump had his supporters come and he stimulated a riot, and they went into the Capitol and they vandalized it, and all of these people involved in it should be in jail. Many of them are still in jail. And in hindsight, what we learn is that Trump, in the speech to the protesters that showed up on that day, said, "Make your opinions be known peacefully." He used the word peacefully and patriotically. And he had actually gone to Nancy Pelosi and asked that the National Guard be present, and she, the acting Speaker of the House at the time, turned him down. And then we also learned that it was the government itself inside the crowd kind of egging on the so-called rioters. So this whole riot was a fake riot. It wasn't even true. And people today are in jail because of this fake riot. Now, when the government gets involved in infiltrating the crowd and egging on the protesters, that's not how our government is supposed to function. So they can frame President Trump, frame his supporters, etc. That's not how our government is supposed to function. Our government is supposed to, it exists to protect our unalienable rights. I mean, this isn't the work of what the United States was based on. This is the work of a totalitarian, tyrannical mindset, which has even infiltrated into North America. And it's not just academic when we talk about these things. People are rotting in jail right now because of what our government did. There's been video for a long time of a man named Ray Epps, who's there amongst the protesters who have a constitutional right to be there, by the way, to voice a disagreement, siding with President Trump on the outcome of the election. And he's there amongst the protesters saying, "Let's go into the Capitol." And everybody around him starts to point at him and say, "Fed, Fed, Fed, Fed." And, these kind of videos were brought to people's attention. They were dismissed. And now here comes this IG report saying that there were actually 26 FBI informants in the crowd, egging the crowd on. This shows you how quick our system of governance bequeathed to us by our founding fathers can drift into this totalitarian mentality. One of the key players in this whole thing is Liz Cheney. Notice this particular report here, or article from the New York Post. This is dated December the 18th, 2024. It says, Trump says Liz Cheney could be in a lot of trouble after House committee accuses her of witness tampering. Here's the article. President-elect Donald Trump thinks former Rep. Liz Cheney could face serious consequences after a House panel called for her to be investigated by the FBI for possible witness tampering during the handling of the Capitol riot probe. Liz Cheney should be in a lot of trouble based on the evidence obtained by the subcommittee, which states that numerous federal laws were likely broken by Liz Cheney, and these violations should be investigated by the FBI, Trump posted about his foe on Truth Social early Wednesday. Evidence uncovered by the subcommittee revealed that former Congresswoman Liz Cheney tampered with at least one witness, Cassidy Hutchinson, by secretly communicating with Hutchinson without Hutchinson's attorney's knowledge, the report from Chairman Loudermilk said. The former Wyoming rep's communication with Hutchinson were illegal and were outside the due functioning of the legislative process and therefore not protected by the Constitution's speech and debate clause, Loudermilk claimed. Hutchinson testified publicly that she was told Trump was so enraged when Secret Service agents refused to drive him to the Capitol on the day of the riot that he lunged for the steering wheel. However, photos from the day showed that Hutchinson had misidentified where the alleged encounter took place, and the driver later confirmed that Hutchinson's testimony was false. Look at this. Cheney, who backed Vice President Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. So this is what we would call the uniparty at work again. Liberal Democrats coming together with sort of rhino Republicans, all in an effort to get Trump. We know where Cheney's loyalties lie. She voted for the Marxist, her father at least was a Marxist professor, Kamala Harris. I mean, what kind of Republican or what kind of conservative does that? Well, Liz Cheney is not a true conservative, as demonstrated by the fact that she voted for Kamala Harris in 2024. But it says Cheney, who backed Vice President Kamala Harris in 2024 election, had repeatedly clashed with Trump throughout his first term. Cheney is reportedly on President Biden's list of people to preemptively pardon before he leaves the White House. Well, there's a tongue twister, preemptive pardons. Being pardoned for crimes that you haven't even been charged with yet. This is to my knowledge, this is a pretty new legal concept, and Liz Cheney is on the list to receive one of these presidential pardons. You know, this whole thing with Liz Cheney, it reminds me very much of Haman in the book of Esther, you know, who was hung on the very gallows that he himself had prepared for Mordecai. And Cheney is the one that put together kind of a Stalinist show trial, you know, trying to make it sound like Trump did something terrible relative to what happened January the 6th, and it turns out that not only was her trial a show trial, not a true trial, but she was actually manipulating testimony and witnesses and talking to people without having their attorney present in an attempt to kind of coach or manipulate the witnesses on what they're supposed to say and what she wanted them to say, and breaking the law, essentially, in the process of accusing Donald Trump of breaking the law. I mean, what kind of person does this? What kind of person uses the forces of government to achieve, you know, some kind of political result like this? This is an example of what you call lawfare, the abuse of the legal system to try to achieve a result against someone that you happen to disagree with politically. Obviously, Cheney disagrees with Trump, or she wouldn't be supporting Harris in the latest election, 2024. But my point is, this, in essence, is how totalitarians act. This is how they behave. Notice this particular article from the New York Post that deals with Cash Patel, who is Trump's appointee to be the new director of the FBI. Notice what the FBI did to Cash Patel. Just the headline. It says, a report reveals that the FBI spied on its likely new director, Cash Patel. So before you become the director of the FBI is spying on you. I thought this was the United States of America, where we don't spy on people. We're not, guilty until proven innocent. And yet you see how the forces of government are being abused to accomplish these ends. And I think this is a sign of the last days, because Daniel predicted that this type of globalist cabal, globalist tyranny would encompass the earth in the last days. I expect to see things like this, unfortunately, more consistently and more regularly. With all of that being said, let's jump to our next bullet point here, and this one relates to Mark of the Beast technology. Just one article to share with you here. You'll recall what the book of Revelation says. Revelation 13, verses 16 through 18, the famous or infamous Mark of the Beast passage. It says, he causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, the freemen and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or their forehead. He provides that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man. His number is 666. On this show, we routinely talk about how technology is moving in a direction that makes this whole Mark of the Beast scenario credible. And it's sort of in that spirit that I share with you this article from Forbes, December the 13th, 2024. It says, why Google's quantum computer chip Willow is a game changer. It says quantum computing promises to disrupt everything from healthcare to finance to scientific research, but only if it can overcome the significant hurdles that have kept it out of the mainstream. It can solve a complex calculation in under 5 minutes, taking the fastest classical supercomputer around 10 septillion years to complete. But what makes Willow even more important is how it addresses one of quantum computing's most persistent challenges, error rates. I mean, not only can it do what a traditional computer could accomplish in septillions in terms of years, but error rates in computations is dramatically reduced with Willow. And I just share this to show you how much technology can be fit onto something so tiny. And you see the picture there of it on, the person's fingertip. And this is where technology is going. This is where it's moving. This is just a computer chip with this type of astronomical capability. And technology is not devolving the other way. It always builds on a foundation, and then it doubles and doubles and doubles, multiplies. And this type of technology, to my mind anyway, indicates that we're not talking about when Mark of the Beast technology is going to show up, because it's already here. Now, I'm not saying this is the Mark of the Beast, but this type of technology will pave the way into the Mark of the Beast system in the second half of the tribulation period. Beyond that, even as I am recording this, the big conversation is drones. I didn't want to put this into my notes here because I didn't want to drone on about drones, and I know very little about drones. But probably one of the best explanations I've heard concerning these drones flying over American cities and things that people are growing greatly alarmed by, and our government, in essence, pleading ignorance over the whole thing, not being real authentic in terms of disclosing exactly what's going on, is Billy Crone talks about how these are setups and psyops. In other words, you whip the population into fear over this, and suddenly more drone legislation becomes interesting and appetizing to people. There's a legitimacy to pass it, in other words, which only enhances the power of the state. Give us control over the skies. Give us control over the airwaves. Give us control over your cell phone. We got to do this to protect you from these drones. So, how does the old adage go? Never let a good crisis go to waste. Create a crisis of some kind. People cry out for a solution, and then government says, just give us a few more police powers to resolve the crisis for you. Like total control over the airwaves, the skies, any type of information that's transmitted, and we'll solve the crisis for you, which only enhances government. And he doesn't just call this a setup, but he calls it a psyop. Because how is the world going to explain away the rapture once it occurs? They'll probably explain it away through people from outer space that came and snatched the non-conformants out of here. And so these drones in the skies, is changing our psychology, where we become open to that kind of explanation. So this all fits, to my mind, under technological signs of the last days, and how technology is moving us aggressively into the last days scenario. Let me go to our next bullet point, which is global religion. We know there's going to be a global religion in the last days. It's spoken of in the book of Revelation, chapter 17 and verse 15. It says, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits. Now, a harlot is always in the Bible, when it's used metaphorically, is used of false religion. The waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. Those four nouns, peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues, are used frequently in the book of Revelation, in particular to communicate universalism, globalism. Cross-reference it with Revelation chapter 5, verse 9, and you'll see what I mean. And the New World Order is a three-legged stool. There's an economic angle, a political angle, and there's also a religious angle. I mean, you need all three for the New World Order. And this is why I believe the Pope is so influential now as we speak. He's putting a Christian veneer, if you will, on all of these kind of New World Order policies, trying to make it sound like globalism and open borders and all of these kinds of things. Really is spiritual to have those kind of things. I mean, it's actually Christian to have those kinds of things. And so that's the role that the Pope is playing. He's literally rolling out the religious arm, if you will, of the New World Order. So with all of that being said, notice this article from the Times of Israel, December 8th. Pope Francis inaugurates a nativity scene in Vatican showing baby Jesus on a kippah. The pontiff, who recently called to investigate Israel for genocide, preaches an end to all war as he dedicates a scene by Palestinian artists to be displayed in Vatican's Paul VI Hall. Pope Francis on Saturday attended the inauguration of a seasonal nativity scene presented by Palestinian officials that featured a baby Jesus lying on a kippah, the traditional scarf used by Palestinians as a national symbol. Now look at all the groups that were involved in this construction, putting it together. And look at all the groups that attended this ceremony. Palestinians from Bethlehem, the Higher Presidential Committee for Church Affairs in Palestine, the Palestine Liberation Organization, the Palestine Assembly, the Palestinian Authority for representing Abbas. Another group present was called the Palestinian Cause. Excerpts released last month from a book of an interview with Francis called by the pontiff to investigate whether Israel's campaign against the Hamas terrorist group in Gaza fits into the definition of genocide. See what's happening? They're building a Palestinian narrative using religion to do it. Right down to the idea that Jesus was not a Jew. Jesus is actually a Palestinian. And Jesus would actually take the side of the Palestinians against the nation of Israel as the nation of Israel is seeking to root out Hamas from Gaza. What is the Pope doing here? He's taking a new world order concept or policy and putting a Christian veneer over it. A letter he wrote to the Middle Eastern Catholics on the first anniversary of the attack, however, never mentioned Hamas by name or made explicit reference to its atrocities, including the hostages. The letter also quoted passages from the Gospel of John. You can't get much more spiritual than that, right? He's quoting the Bible. That have historically been used to fuel religious anti-Semitism. The nativity scene is also suggested of a trope that Jesus was a Palestinian, which drew anger from Israeli officials in 2013 when invoked by Abbas. Here's another picture of the Pope kind of getting up close. And this I found on X. It says, breaking. The fake people that never condemned the fake Pope, that never condemned the October 7th massacre today attended the exhibition showing a Palestinian Jesus resting on a Palestinian kippah. And then this particular person, Dr. Eli David, who posted this picture, as the Pope is commemorating this at the Vatican, said someone should tell this Pope, there we go, that Jesus was born and raised and died as a Jew living in Judea. So obviously this idea that Jesus was a Palestinian is nothing more than a rewriting of what the scripture says. In fact, here's a genealogy that you're going to find in Matthew's gospel. Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 through 18, it genealogically links Jesus, first of all, back to David, and then from David back to Abraham, the patriarch of the nation of Israel. So quite obviously, Jesus was not a Palestinian. Jesus was Jewish. His whole ministry took place within the borders of Israel. His whole life took place within the borders of Israel. That's where he was born. That's where he ministered. That's where he ministered. That's where he died. That's where he rose from the dead. That's where he ascended. And read the biblical story yourself, and you'll not see anything about Jesus being a Palestinian. In fact, the name Palestine, as I understand it, had not even been invented. I mean, that term comes from Hadrian, after the Jews had been kicked out of the land. 2nd century AD, he named it after the Philistines, perpetual and perennial enemies of Israel. throughout the pages of the Old Testament. It's an anti-Semitic term, and it was designed to say that the Jews never had presence in that land. That's the Palestinian narrative. But when the story of the Bible unfolds, there's no such thing as a Palestinian. The name hadn't even been concocted yet. So here's the Pope giving obeisance to this manger scene, portraying Jesus as a Palestinian. Do you see what's happening here, folks? They're using spirituality to put a Christian, and I use Christian very loosely here, obviously, a Christian veneer, a spiritual veneer on the New World Order agenda, which is pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel. Let's even hijack Jesus to get this job done. What did Paul anticipate for the last days in 2 Timothy 3 verse 5? What would people be like? They would hold to a form of godliness, although they have denied its power. Avoid such men as these. And this is what you're seeing develop now in our world, the religious arm of the New World Order. Well, the New World Order also needs a headquarters, and this takes us to our next bullet point, which is Babylon. We know that there is going to be a certain city that will be the headquarters of the Antichrist and his wicked religious system. We find that prediction in Revelation 17, verse 18, which says, "The woman which you saw is the great city which reigns over the kings of the earth." Now, as you read those chapters, Revelation 17 and 18, that city has a name. The name is Babylon. I have no desire to allegorize that into making it say something it's not saying. The word Babylon is used 300 times in the Bible. It always means Babylon. That's how I see it being used in Revelation 17 and 18. Babylon, as you look at this map, is that city in modern-day Iraq between the Euphrates and the Tigris. That's where the Tower of Babel once stood. Depending on how the global flood rearranged the topography of the world, that's the general area where the Garden of Eden most likely once was. It's the area where the nation of Israel was taken into captivity for the 70-year Babylonian deportation. You'll see that in Daniel chapter 1, verse 2. The Hebrews called it Shinar. The Greek name for it is Mesopotamia. Meso between, Potamia as in Potomac. Potamia between the rivers. And according to the book of Revelation, that's where the final city of the Antichrist will be. Notice this quote here from E.W. Bullinger's commentary on the book of Revelation concerning Revelation 17, verse 18. He says, God says it's a city. He does not say a system or a religion, but a city. So it's a city on planet Earth that will be the headquarters of the harlotrous religious system. But some people, they get so involved in the harlot religious angle that they forget this will be an actual city on planet Earth, just as literal as Los Angeles, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Tokyo, etc., etc. You may have some question marks about this. If you do, I have a book out called Babylon, the Bookends of Prophetic History, which will lay out the case why Babylon in Revelation 17 and 18 actually means Babylon. So we like to report on this show things that are happening in Babylon that are preparing the way for this end time city. We've brought to your attention things like this before. UNESCO adds Iran's Harkanian forests and Iraq's Babylon to the World Heritage List. That's an older story. It's a little dated, but those kinds of things are interesting to us because we think that they are precursors, if you will, for this end time system that the Bible anticipates. And one of the things we've brought to your attention is this map here. This comes from the AI FAW project, and it's basically a canal. There's a wetland and a dry land type of canal, and it connects Turkey with the Persian Gulf, and it flows right through Iraq, not far from Babylon. And so this also could be one of the ways that Babylon is going to become a wealthy and maritime city in the last days that the Bible anticipates. So with all of that being said, I ran into this very recent headline here from the Mirror.com, December the 8th, 2024. It says a new $17 billion mega project will rival the Suez Canal by building an uninterrupted highway between Europe and Asia. The multi-billion pound route, I think I said dollars earlier, it's pounds, route of development is set to run across the length of Iraq, stretching 745 miles from the northern Turkish border to the southern Persian Gulf. The article says a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure project is being planned to establish a new transport links between Europe and West Asia. The proposed route will span across Iraq, stretching 745 miles from the northern Turkish border to the southern Persian Gulf. Iraqi Prime Minister said he views the project as a cornerstone of sustainable non-oil economy, a link benefiting Iraq and the region and contributing to economic integration efforts, according to the Cradle. The route of development might present a more financially viable alternative to the Suez Canal, given the projected capacity of the Grand FAW port. As reported by Anadolu Agency, the Iraqi transport minister said the port will be able to host large trade ships with a depth up to 19.5 meters, close quote. People have told me all the time that, look, your view of Babylon is wrong. It's just a little city. It's insignificant, and it's not a maritime city. But what's interesting is if you give history enough time to catch up to what God's Word says, the things that God anticipates in His Word start to look very credible. And there's no reason to think that the prophecies related to Babylon should be treated any differently. And then let's now move to our final bullet point, and this has to do with societal sins. What are the type of sins that are going to dominate the world in the last days, dominate society? Well, we have a list of them found in the book of Revelation, chapter 9, verses 20 and 21, which is a description of what the world is going to be like when the sixth, I believe it is, trumpet judgment is sounded. It says this: the rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues did not repent of the works of their hands, so as not to worship demons and the idols of gold and of silver and of brass and of stone and of wood, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. They did not repent of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their immorality, nor of their thefts. 7 major sins mentioned. I've got 2 underlined. The worship of demon and murders, because I've got some new news items related to those. Here is a list of 7 sins of society, articulating what Revelation 9, 20, and 21 predicts. And the 2 we have underlined here are demon worship and murder. Let's talk a little bit about murder. Murder becoming commonplace. What did Jesus say in Matthew 24, verses 37 through 39? He said, "For the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying, given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So it will be at the coming of the Son of Man." So if you want to understand what the world will be like morally, just before Jesus comes back, study what the world was like morally just before the global flood hit. before God brought judgment. That's what the world is going to be like on the eve of the tribulation period, and even into the tribulation period. And one of the things that characterized the days of Noah is widespread violence. Genesis 6, verse 11 of that time period says, now there was, the earth rather was corrupt in the sight of God, and the earth was filled with violence. It goes on, and it says, then God said to Noah, the end of humanity has come before me. The earth is filled with violence. And behold, I'm about to destroy them with the earth. I have there in brackets the Hebrew word for violence. It sounds very similar to Hamas, that word, which I think comes from a similar Semitic descriptor. And I think that's where Hamas, the terrorist group, gets its name. So what was the world like just prior to the flood in the days of Noah? The earth was filled with violence. In other words, murder, the taking of innocent life, was normalized. And I'm here to tell you, folks, that is exactly what is happening right now in our culture. Notice this article from trendingpolitics.com. Ivy League professor describes the healthcare CEO killer as an icon. December the 13th, 2024. It says a professor at the University of Pennsylvania reportedly described Mangione, if I'm pronouncing that right, the suspected killer of a United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson. Now, you remember from the news that this was somebody that went up behind this CEO of United Healthcare and basically filled his body with bullets because they were disgruntled about the healthcare industry. Shot him in the back several times and then fled the scene of the crime. How do you look at someone that fills someone's body with bullets because they're disgruntled about something? You don't put a happy face on it. The person is a cold-blooded murderer. And yet influencers in our culture are turning this guy, this murderer, into some sort of hero. Here is this University of Pennsylvania professor treating him as an icon in a now deleted social media post. Julia, and I'm going to have a hard time pronouncing this name, but you can find it in the article. She's an assistant professor of English and cinema media studies at an Ivy League school, who self-describes herself as a socialist, posted a video to TikTok of her smiling as the song "Do You Hear the People Sing" from a famous musical played, according to a report from the New York Post. This professor, who goes by the title "The Soviet" on social media, deleted the post after backlash. But this is what she originally said. Have you ever been prouder to be a professor at the University of Pennsylvania? Reads the caption on the deleted post, referencing the fact that this Mangione was an alumnus. Boy, I'm so proud of this person who's an alumnus of our institution, an Ivy League institution, that I'm a professor at. Yeah, I'm a socialist, but I teach English and cinema and media studies. I mean, here's a key influencer, a key academic saying murder is great. It says here, to anyone wondering how America's youth become so radical to murder someone, it's because of extremist professors. UPenn graduate, this individual wrote on an X post. I don't have any slides or news clippings on this, but Elizabeth Warren, senator, is now on record saying, yeah, it's tragic that this guy died and was shot, was assassinated. But, people, when they get really upset or work themselves into a frenzy, really have no outlet, kind of justifying this. I mean, if you're disgruntled about the healthcare agency or industry, I should say, if you're disgruntled about that and you don't have any outlet for it, then I guess murder is okay. It's stunning. I was listening to the Mike Gallagher show a few days back, and he was talking in that particular show about a poll conducted for 20 somethings and below. 40% of them felt that this murder was somehow justified, acceptable, and appropriate. Yeah, it's a last option. But what are people supposed to do, when they get upset about the healthcare industry and don't have an outlet, making it sound like assassination is okay? I've seen a lot of people to this murderer attach sex appeal. A lot of people from the opposite sex saying, "Oh, he's really cute. Oh, he looks really good. He's pretty cut, He looks pretty good with his shirt off." I mean, as if what this monster did is somehow, enticing. I remember when Richard Ramirez, sometime back, decades back, did his mayhem. How many women, were sending him, love letters and cards and things like that while he was in prison, wanting to have some kind of relationship with him. I mean, what in the world is happening in this country? What is happening is what God says is an abomination: murder. I mean, that's commandment number 6. Thou shalt not murder. You murder someone, you're taking in cold blood another human being that bears God's image. God says it's an abominable. That's what was spreading throughout the earth in the days of Noah. That's why he brought the global deluge. This is why he's bringing judgment in the end times. Murder is murder, and murder is wrong. I remember there was a professor when the horrors of October 7th happened. And he's on the Palestinian side of the ledger, and he called that mayhem, as a professor, exhilarating. Well, there's nothing exhilarating, folks, about murder, and yet murder, is being normalized in our society. Even the Trump assassination attempts. There have been 2 assassination attempts against Trump. I was disgusted to see countless posts of people saying, "Boy, I wish that don't like Trump politically. Boy, I wish those assassins had, finished the job." Unbelievable. And yet this is the type of civilization and society that we're living in. I do recall the Menendez brothers. I was in law school when that whole thing happened. If I remember it right, they came and their parents were sleeping, and one of them, Eric and Lyle, or both of them, shot their parents dead, filled them with multiple bullets. And when they were put on trial for murder, I remember their counsel, Leslie Abramson, I believe was her name, trying to put forth the argument, and I'm very happy that ultimately this argument didn't succeed, and the Menendez brothers are basically where they belong, in prison. Although I did see something recently in the news about a potential parole hearing for one or both of them. But Leslie Abramson put forth the idea that, these murders really aren't murders. They're just self-defense because the parents were abusers. And I'm not denying that Eric and Lyle Menendez were abused by those parents. And I feel very badly for them about that. But that is not a justification for murder. What you do when you justify murder on those grounds is you open the door to legalized revenge. A justifiable homicide becomes justifiable when your own life is put in imminent danger. If someone comes into my house and threatens me and my wife and my daughter and my family with imminent harm, then it is justifiable for me to take their life to protect myself, but the threat has to be imminent. When you're shooting people because you're disgruntled about the healthcare industry, there's no eminent self-defense there. When Eric and Lyle Menendez are shooting their parents who happen to be asleep on the couch, I'm sorry that they were abused. I really am. But there's no justifiable homicide there because there's no imminent threat related to the use of self-defense. And so the fact that our standards are changing here and weakening here shows me that we're normalizing murder and we're moving into exactly what God said would characterize the last days generation. It would be characterized by the sin of murder. One other fast article, and with this we're finished, related to societal sins, the second one being demon worship. Notice this particular article from Breitbart.com, December 2nd, 2024. The title of it is "A Satanic Temple Religious Release Program is Kicking Off in an Ohio Elementary School." Hey, you want to let the kids out for Bible reading and Bible study, then you got to let them out also if they want to be involved in satanic temple rituals. The article says a religious release program focusing on satanic studies is kicking off in some schools in Marysville, Ohio, as an alternate to Bible-based instruction. The article goes on and it says, according to WCMH, June Everett, described as a campaign director for the after-school Satan Club and an ordained minister for the Satanic Temple, claimed the program for students are only implemented when parents seek them out and only in districts where other release programs are in place. This school currently offers a Christian-based program via LifeWise, which is designed to take students through the entire Bible, beginning in Genesis and ending in Revelation, according to the website, which adds each lesson reviews a Bible passage as well as a Living Wise character trait. So we're going to have a release time for Bible study from public school. The Satanic Temple comes along and says, well, we need one for the Satanic Temple as well. The Satanic Temple, not to be confused with the Church of Satan, which was founded by Anton LaVey in 1966, said in a press release that it launched HAIL, H-A-I-L, as a response to an uptick in Christian-based release programs in schools across the country. They claim their program allows them to learn about values such as empathy, compassion, justice in a fun environment without religious pressure or confusion. Everett made no mention of the Satanic Temple unveiling the world's first religious abortion clinic in 2023, where it specifically said that it would offer abortion rituals for mothers to get rid of unwanted shame for ending the life of their unborn child. And I think I'm bringing this subject to your attention because I'm trying to show you how the world of the occult, the world of Satan, the fallen angelic dark realm, is just another example of how it's being normalized in our culture. If you're going to have release time for Bible study, we need release time for satanic ritual involvement. And if you're going to offer spirituality A, you need spirituality B. So the occult is almost looked at as if it's normal, just like murder is being looked at like it's normal. And I'm here to tell you folks that God says that's enough when this kind of stuff happens. You move into demon worship, you make it normal, and you start making murder normal, God says that's enough. Those are societal sins, and I can't postpone my hand of judgment any longer. So, in closing, here's kind of our review slide that we used in this particular session. Look at how we're moving in the direction of the last days scenario. We've talked about global tyranny, Mark of the Beast technology, global religion, Babylon, and 2 key societal sins. There's some real good news in all of this. It's found in Titus 2:13, which says, looking for the blessed hope and the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. The world is not falling apart. Rather, things are falling into place. And against the very dark backdrop that I've tried to articulate in this session is a promise that Jesus makes to his own that he will come to take us out of the earth into the Father's house in an event called the rapture before the wrath of God hits planet Earth. And you can be tied into that promise simply by placing your personal faith or trust in the finished work of Jesus Christ. We would encourage you to do that now, even as I am speaking. A couple of infomercials by way of closing. Go to the App Store and download our free Andy Woods Ministries app to catch all of our current and archived content. Also, I would encourage you to go to our website, Andy Woods, before we get to that one, our podcast, where you can watch or listen rather to Pastor's Point of View in podcast format. Just go to wherever it is you get your podcast and type in Andy Woods Ministries and enjoy Pastor's Point of View in podcast format. I would encourage you to go to our website, andywoodsministries.org, to catch all of our recent and past content. There's a conspicuous way on the homepage there to sign up for our newsletter, meaning whenever we post a Pastor's Point of View show, our notes that we read from here will show up in your inbox, all free of charge should you choose to take advantage of that. I'm the president of a school, Chafer Theological Seminary. If you're interested in seminary training, check out Chafer at chafer.edu. Check out our brand new journal that's now out. This is our fall edition. Key academic articles on things that we care about. Free grace theology, dispensational theology, eschatology are there at your fingertips in our journal entitled Pneumatikos. And I want to make you aware of the SLBC ProfCon that's coming right up in the new year. This is going to be held Friday, February 21st, and it's going to go into the 22nd. We invite people to stick around for church on Sunday because a lot of our presenters at the conference will be speaking at our normal service times here at Sugarland Bible Church, Sunday the 23rd. But this is a Faith for Final Days conference. This will equip you to take your stand and understand prophetic trends in the last days. Featured speakers are historian Bill Federer, Olivier Melnick, Middle East expert Dr. Randall Price. I'm presenting also, and we have special music by Claude and Rebecca Chu, and also Olam Worship. Friday night is a banquet at nearby Sugar Creek Country Club. Saturday here at Sugarland Bible Church is the all-day conference, which basically is going to start early Saturday morning and is going to stretch into the latter afternoon, early evening, culminating with a Q&A session. And then, of course, Sunday is our normal church services, but featuring some of our speakers. We need you to go to our website and register, though. And we're filling up fast, so make sure you sign up for the Saturday conference. Our banquet is already full for Friday night, but make sure you get on the waiting list because people have a tendency to cancel at the last moment. And so you want to have your name there when, and I think it's more when rather than if, when openings arise. I want to make you aware of a new book. This is now live and available on Amazon. You can go to Andy Woods Ministries also to gain access to this book. It's entitled The Bible and your vote, biblical principles for any election. This is not a Trump versus Hillary or Trump versus Kamala book. It doesn't get into current political personalities, but it's a topical Bible study on what the Bible says about key issues that we vote on constantly. So this is why it's called Biblical Principles for Any Election. It'll take you into economic issues. It'll take you into social issues. It'll take you into foreign affairs issues. It'll take you into the Israel issue, the globalism issue. It's a Bible study on how we should vote as Christians with a Christian worldview. Don't think that because we're not in the political season that somehow this book is no longer applicable. It's very applicable because it's biblical principles for any election. And the midterm elections are going to be here faster than most of us think or even wish. But we need to be fortified and equipped as God's people related to how to vote, not just according to party loyalty, but vote according to what God says. So this book will equip you there. That's all I have time for today. So thank you for watching, sharing, listening to Pastor's Point of View. This is our last major presentation on Pastor's Point of View in 2024. And so, Lord willing, if the rapture doesn't come first, we will see you in 2025. God bless you. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.